welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join me and to learn how to put your quilt on properly using the hoop frame. Also, I'm going to help you get started and a few little tips and tricks that I do before I start quilting a quilt. And these things, these steps will really help reduce the anxiety that we get before starting to quilt on our beautiful piece tops. And so if you will follow these steps and do them every time you quilt, you will feel more comfortable in your knowledge and your know-how and the directions that you need to move and your designs, everything. It's kind of the prep that we need to get rid of those wiggles and shakes that we feel as every time we come and start quilting. So let's get started, okay? The first thing that I do is, like our pre-quilting checklist, is I gather up all my materials. And so I have my quilt here on this side, and I have all the tools and accessories I'm going to need. But I want to make sure that I understand how to quilt my design correctly. And with this design and this pattern, it's my little clementine pattern that I made for our 16-inch machines. Today I'm using the manual machine. It has no stitch regulation on it, but it is a great starting point for all you quilters who are ready for that next step. So let me tell you real quickly about the manual machine and how it quilts, and let me just show you a few tips and tricks. So if you're ready to upgrade from your domestic machine and you're ready for a little bit more dedicated space, this is a great machine to jump into at a great price. So it's got the 16-inch throat space, so that's an added bonus. It also gives you the handles. The handles are adjustable in and out, just like the Elite and the X machine. It also gives you the buttons to use. Oh gosh, so it eliminates you reaching over the side and tapping on the buttons for your needle up, needle down. They're right here on the handles. It also gives you the speed. Now, it doesn't have the stitch regulation, but you can upgrade to an X machine. So you'll have the stitch regulation, and you'll have the screen right here in front, and you'll have the stitching modes as well. So not just manual mode, you'll have regulated precise and cruise and the based. So let's get started and prep our machine so that we can start quilting and testing our design concepts out. So let me jump in and get started. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is change the foot on my machine. This comes with the standard foot, but with the manual machine, you can use any of our feet that we have available, because you can also add the ruler base onto it. So there's a lot of pluses with this that will get you quilting the more detailed quilting that you really want to learn. And you can start out very basic as well. So let's take this foot off, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 3mm Allen wrench here, and I'm just going to loosen the screw, and I'm going to come back behind right here so you can see what I'm doing and turn. And I just need a little help turning it, and you'll notice that as I loosen it, how the foot went down. Now that's loosened enough, I can just use my fingers to loosen the screw totally. And I could take the screw all the way out, and you'll want to remove the foot. And you know, it's probably a good idea to unthread your machine while you're doing this, because we're going to put the needle in the down position. So I'm going to remove my foot, but I'm going to make sure that I have my little thumb screw right here in a secure location. I'm just going to take this foot off. This is a great foot to use, but it's not made to use with rulers. So I'm going to quickly take and use now this open toe foot. And the reason I'm using the open toe foot is because I can see the needle a little better. And the design that I'm making, I want to see the position of the needle so I can get right down there near the points. Now, I can use this with the ruler because it's got a little blunt edge, and so it will fit right along those 1/4-inch templates, and that's what I want to do. That's what's great about our feet. We're really thinking about making them accessible and usable for how you want to quilt. And this is how I want to quilt. I want to see my needle in the position so I can get right there into my corners and creases. So I'm just going to quickly move it and put it right here on my shaft, and I'm going to let it sit in position. I want to make sure it's away from the hole, but I'm going to put my needle in the down position. I can just use my buttons for that. So I can push the button. Now I'm going to use my height foot gauge. So notice that my foot is positioned correctly. I have it centered. Now I want to take my little thumb screw right here, and I'm going to reach around so you can see what I do. And I'm going to start screwing it in with my fingers. Okay, I'm just going to start it. And I put it into the hole and started screwing it up, okay? And I want to screw it down as far as it can, but I don't want to tighten it, okay? And I'll tighten it with my Allen wrench, so just use your fingers to tighten it, to bring it to the position. And now it's stabilized, so I can put my needle in the down position, okay? But there's still some adjustments that we can make. So I'll put my needle in the down position. And now, because it's not tightened, well, it shouldn't be tightened. It's not tightened too much. I can slide my height foot gauge over it. And now I can hold on to it and take my Allen wrench and I can tighten it up. Let me get my Allen wrench, and you don't need to tighten it so tight, but you just need to make sure it's secure. And I'm not really over tightening it at all. And now I can slide it from underneath. The reason that you're putting the needle in the down position is the needle will be at its lowest point next to the bobbin and the hook. It's really important that you recognize and realize that the needle needs to be in the down position. Now, if you set the height with the needle in the up position, you're going to hear this banging sound. And if you do, then you're going to know that you set it with the wrong position, the needle position, and you need to reset it. So that means that the foot is really hitting the plate, and you shouldn't have that sound. So let's get going. And let's bring our needle back up and thread our machine. So now that I've changed the foot, I can thread my needle. And just make sure you change your needle every time you start a new quilt. Okay, now I've got my bobbin in. What I'm going to do is bring my bobbin up so that I see it and everything's working. With my thread down, notice how it comes up. That was good. It came up and we're just testing that. We're bringing both of them up and I'm bringing it back behind. Now let's put some fabric on and test the machine and the tension before we start quilting. So I have this little piece of fabric, and this is my test piece of fabric, all right, that I'm going to just put on, and notice I've just layered all three together. That's one of the nice things about a hoop frame. Man, it makes it easy for you to take your whole quilt on and off. So I'm just going to adjust it up so I have a clean spot. And I'm just going to put this in place. And then I'm going to clamp these back down. Now I'm doing this a little backwards, but that's okay because it's just a small area. All right, so now I'm just going to clamp my clamps on, and I like to clamp all of my clamps on so that I can get all my straps on as I'm testing. Really important, because as you're moving across your quilt, if you don't have these straps in the right position, they will really hinder your quilting as you're moving across. They'll catch on the carriage, they'll catch lots of different places, so make sure that you're counting as you're putting them on, and all of them are hooked, okay? So now I have them all hooked up. Now I'm going to, my bottom thread's hidden underneath. I'm just going to pull it up again and make sure I pull it up. And notice how I'm using the machine to pull that up. Nice. Okay, so let's see how it's sewing, and then I'll show you how to use the templates and the designs that I'm going to do. So let's just turn it on. And remember, it's manual, so I've started out slow. And I'm in charge of my stitch length. So if it's in a slow speed, I'm going to move it slow, because if I started moving it fast, man, I'm going to get huge stitches. So, but I can also turn my speed up by these nifty buttons right here, and the top arrow button lets me increase my speed. It's a lot of fun, you guys. All right, now I'm going to turn it off. It seems to be sewing really nice, okay? I just have to learn to adjust my speed as I'm quilting, which is really key. Now, if I had it at a really fast speed, let me show you what will happen. All right, I'm going to turn the speed up really fast, but I'm going to move it really slow. I want to show you what happens with the stitches. See how teeny tiny my stitches are? Man, not a good look, but I just need to adjust my movements to get my stitches just right. And with a manual machine, it's not hard to do. You kind of get in that groove. It's like exercises. Once you get to that point, it's like, you don't feel the pain. You got that speed down. So just make sure that you know what to look for. If you're getting teeny tiny stitches and you're not moving very fast, hey, slow down your movements. Hey, and also the same thing. If you've got it on a slow speed and you're moving it really, really fast, you're getting those long stitches. They're not skip stitches, they're long stitches. Slow down your movements. That's all it takes, just like driving a car. Okay, so let's get started on the design part so that I feel really comfortable in what I'm quilting. So I showed you a little bit about the designs that I decided to do. So I'm going to do a little design that's, they call it the orange peel design, but I added an extra element in there. So I'm going to do these X's with these little petals, 4 little petals, so it'll look like a little circle all the way across. But like I'm doing with my other design on it, I am going to do my little swirls inside those. Now I have about a 4-inch border. It's 3.5. I can't remember what size it was. However, I have segmented it off into different sections so I can get my design to look proportioned equally all the way across. So that's what I did. I measured it, and it was 58 inches wide. And then I noticed that I had my little corner piece, and I thought, oh, that's not working. So I'll show you when I put the quilt on what I did to divide it into sections so I could get my design to look proportioned. But let's try the design here. And I'm using our rulers. I'm going to use our track on the rulers to make my measurements. It's roughly a 4-inch square, but we're just going to eyeball it because we're just testing it out. I'm just going to move across roughly to a 4-inch mark. Roughly to the 4-inch mark. All right, see how nice it is to be able to see where your needle is? And notice that my stitches were pretty small because I was moving it not as fast as the needle was going up and down. I want to start and I want to go down this direction. So I want to turn my ruler and roughly make it to a 4. And I want to keep it as nice and straight. So use your true grips. And now I'm just a little too slow, but I'm going to stay up with it. Okay, now I'm to 4, and I'm just going to go across, and I'm going to make the 4, just keep going. And I'll give it some more speed here, just a minute. It's kind of hard because I'm using the one hand to drive, but if you're ever driven a stick shift, you know how to multitask, so that's good. All right, so now I can make my X. So now I can position my ruler. And as you're positioning your ruler, know that with the foot, there's a 1/4-inch distance from the tip of this foot right here. Let me move my scissors. 1/4-inch from the tip of the foot right here to where the needle is, okay? So you kind of want to set it off roughly 1/4 of an inch. And we're just going to eyeball it. It doesn't have to be exact right now, but as you're quilting across your quilt, man, you'll get better. When you first start out, you're a little anxious, and so they might not be quite right, but that's the growth. But see how I positioned it? So it's pretty good. It's slightly off, but now I want to move along, so I'm going to show you how I'd move along my seam, 1/4 of an inch, and just kind of eyeball, and just kind of keep it nice and straight. Well, that was a little wobbly. And get to this corner here, okay? And this is why the practicing is so important. It just really helps with that confidence that you're going to want and need before you start quilting on your quilt. So now I have my X. Now X, I'm going to keep it there, for my orange peel look. And now I'm going to use this one here to offset it so I can see. So I want to kind of bring it in. Now let me show you right here. So let me show you what it's going to look like. So I'm going to look and position it so it's going to go around and try and end up right here on this point. I'm trying. So now I can keep going around and try and position it. As I'm going around, I want it to come around. That turned out pretty good. So it's kind of a half circle, and that's why I'm just practicing. I'm enjoying the process. I love the process of learning how to do these designs and what they're going to look like. And as I'm going around, notice what it looks like. So I'm ending up right there in the corner. See how fun that is? So that's what I'm going to do on my quilt. And it's going to have the 4 petals, and then I'm going to fill it in with the swirls. Okay. Now, if you wanted to eliminate the X, you can. And maybe that's all I'll do is draw the X on. As I'm practicing, you'll learn what you want to do and how you want to make the design on your quilt. And it could change. You could see that as you're quilting, you don't like the swirls, or you don't like that little X portion of it, or you just like the simplicity of what this looks like and you don't want to add the swirls. I mean, things can change, but quilting it before you get to your quilt is really important. So let's get to our quilt. And I'll finish this up. I'm not going to actually sew on my quilt. I'm going to show you how to set it up and get it ready to quilt. And then we're going to quilt it together. So at a later Tuesdays with Grace. Okay, so now that I'm done, let me show you how easy it is. I just pull on my threads, okay, to give it a tail. So now I can bring it forward, and I have a tail on top and underneath. Now I'm going to pull it back to where I stopped, and I'm going to insert the needle in the down position, and now I can pull the threads up and cut them. And that way I have a clean thread. Now if you're quilting and you want to stabilize your stitch, just take it at the beginning and the end, but in manual mode, because it's really fast little stitching, you get it to stabilize right away. Now if you're using the stitch regulation, you might want to take a couple little stitches, anchor stitches, to lock it in place. So very easy. So let's just take this little panel off, and let me show you how easy it is to set your quilt up on a hoop frame. So I'm just going to jump in and take all of my clamps off. Next I'm going to put my leader claws across my frame, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to pin using the leader claws. And I like the ruler base. It really does help give me a little table to work across as I'm working. So I'd encourage you to purchase a ruler base if you're going to get into quilting. So let me just put this off to the side. All right, so let me get my leaders here. All right. So I'm going to position my leaders. I'm going to push my machine off to the side, and I'm going to position my leaders right here. So I'm going to work from the center out. All right, and I have already marked on my leaders on my top and my bottom. But what I've learned, it's really cool, that all you have to do on the hoop frame is pin the top portion of it on your leaders. Now bring it up and behind the pole and over, and see where I've marked my center? That's my center with a nice big old Sharpie. Okay, so I've marked my center, and that's how I'm going to start pinning from the center out. I have already sandwiched my quilt, and then I folded all the layers up. So I positioned it just like that. And now, I'm not going to start from the center and work one direction then the other. This is just for pinning the quilt on. So I'm going to bring my cute little quilt over, and I have my top and my bottom, and I'm going to unfold it to reveal. Okay, so now this is my center mark right here. That's the center of my quilt, and that's how I measured it. So I'm going to start pinning it from that mark out. What's cool about this too, it doesn't, and then I'm going to find my pin cushion. See my nifty little pin cushion here? And I'm just going to start pinning across from the center point out. And the closer you pin it together, the more even it's going to be. So I encourage you to take your time and pin it. You don't have to pin one on top of the other, but just make sure you don't have too big of a gap in between, because as the clamps pull, it'll pull unevenly, and we want it on as straight as possible. So that's what I encourage you to do. So let me get this pinned on, and then I'll show you how to clamp and position your machine to start quilting. Okay, I'm to the end of the first side. What's great about the leaders is it also gives you, especially the hoop frame leaders, it gives you this nice top leader cloth. And if you're not using it, I encourage you to get a set of leaders. It helps you not waste as much fabric. You only have to buy one set of leaders, and I know fabric's expensive, but keeping the waste of the fabric without having to have an excess amount to act as your leader is just really nice. And it does help you pin it on straighter. But not only that, everybody asks, what's the rope? It gets in my way. Well, it really doesn't after you start rolling. It's just that first little bit, and it does take up a little bit of area as you're using your domestic machine, because it just helps you start rolling and rolling straighter all the way from the top, from one side to the other. Also, with the leader set, you get some side leaders, which, oh God, I can't tell you how nice they are. They really help keep the sides nice and straight. And so if you're not using those, wow, you should be using them and then clamping your bungee clamps, which are your side tension, to that extra little leader on your hoop frames. And you will have beautiful sides. They won't be stretched from one side to the other. Okay. So now I have pinned. That didn't take long at all. And it just took care of that excess fabric, got it up off the floor so we're not breaking our back doing it. All right, and then now what I'm going to do is shift it to the side. All right, so, to my starting position. Now I like to work from left to right, just like we read and write. It's just easier for my brain to process, okay? But to develop your muscle memory, sometimes it's good for you to go from right to left. It works your mind really well, but we're not going to do that today, okay? I don't want to work my mind too much because I'm trying a little bit different design and I want to make it nice and accurate. So I'm learning some new things. All right, so as I'm positioning it, I want to take my machine and move it to the left, all right? And I told you those clamps get in the way. That's what it had done. It got hooked up on the ruler base. So I'm just going to watch it as I pull it to this side. And I want to pull it to this side as far as I can. This is really nice to hold the machine into place where you're using your clamps on the machine so you can do your straight stitches. Okay, so now I'm going to position it. And I want to make sure that I don't get too close to the back. So look how I'm positioning my needle so that the back of the hopping foot hits the take-up pole. This is the take-up pole that goes through the arm, the throat of the machine. I'm taking it back, and I want to position my quilt right here in front. And as I'm going along, I just kind of want to push it down, and then I want to grab my clamps. And so I'm going to start from the center and start clamping it into place. So even because I have that little extra space, I don't want to hit these. So I want to come in just a little bit. And I just kind of want to eyeball it. Because as I start clamping it up, notice this. So I'm going to pull this across and just kind of see if I can get up there. And look, I'm pretty close and I'll probably hit that. So let's bring it up just a little bit more. Now that I've got it down there in that position, that's what's nice about using your machine to position your quilt just right as you're quilting. It really does help. And with any of the quilts, as you're rolling, you have to do the same thing on the rolling frames. It doesn't make the hoop frames that much harder. It's not, because you have to do this positioning with the rolling frames as well. If you don't get in the right position, you're going to hit the take-up pole on the rolling frames. So just know there are things that are different about the frames from one frame to the next. It doesn't make it any harder. It's just how you're using it. So I'm going to start clamping my clamps on. All right. And I have one more to go. Now, where is it? Here it is. It's right here. So one more to go as I'm positioning it. And it's not totally straight, but because I'm free motion quilting, it's going to be awesome. All right, so now with this frame here, it doesn't have the front clamps on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pull it like this to get my wrinkles out, and I'm going to bring this up because I don't want it on the ground. So if you don't want yours on the ground, there's a couple ways you can do this, okay? We have some accessories that you can use called quilt clips. They are awesome, and they come in 2 different sizes. They come in 1.5 inches and 2 inches. I could use these clamps here and clamp it down, both of them, and then use my pink or my blue quilt clips to clamp this up, or I can just clamp both of them inside this one. Doesn't matter, okay? I'm going to show you this. I can clamp this over. I just don't want to sew down on this, but I won't. But then I could use my quilt clip right here. Let me see if I've got a quilt clip. Do we have one? Yeah, it's okay. All right, we'll show them that. Now I want to take care of my little clamps on the back side of this. So I'm just going to start rolling, okay? And I'm just going to roll this up and bring my straps over, and the straps are adjustable for your quilting. And now we're ready to get started. Let me talk to you real quickly before I leave you about how I set up my quilt for working on my designs and how I did my border. Because I really feel like it's something that we don't think about, and it's like, oh, how do those professionals do it? And this is where I'd use the side clamps right here. And I clamp my bungee clamps to it. Or what I can do is use my pins, and here's my leaders, my side leaders right here. And a lot of you are probably asking, well, why didn't you pin the bottom leader to it? Well, because I don't have to till I get close to the end. And I'll do the same thing. And because I can shift it back and forth, I can eliminate that step till I get to the very bottom of it. And then, because it's a hoop frame, not a rolling frame, because I'm rolling everything up on the rolling frame, I can just quickly pin my bottom leader to it, and it's going to take care of that extra tension that I'll need when I get to the bottom. So you don't have to do that step right away, but notice, look how nice and straight that is, and look how it just keeps it, the tensioning on it, really nice. So now I can just use this clamp here. You need to get the leaders, if you know. It really does help your quilting as you're quilting. And now I can start basting it down along the edges, and that's what I'll show you what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm just going to take this clamp off and re-clamp it on over the top like I did the other. I just like to get it out of the way because I don't like to step on my beautiful quilts, especially if I have white fabric on them. Nobody likes to see a footprint on a beautiful white quilt, no matter what size shoe you wear. It could be really petite. So I'm just going to make sure that I keep my bottom leader around and accessible when I get to the bottom of my quilt. And notice, this is what I did. So I measured the width of my quilt. But what I did is I measured the width of my top border from this side to that side, all the way to the outer edge. Then I thought, oh, that's not going to work because I want to section it off to make my little X's. And so I made my mark so that this was my square, okay? And then I measured from this point and this point right here on this side. I measured from here, this seam, to this, right here, the inner portion of it. And then I started sectioning it off. And I found what size was probably the closest to it, and it was probably 4 1/8 inches. So that's what I did. I just started sectioning it off, just like when you're cutting the cinnamon rolls or the bread, and you want to cut the proportions even. You'll start from the center, then you'll section the 2 sections off into, you know, what half what is half of that, and that's what I did. So now I just can tack my quilt down, and notice I have my pins. So as I'm tacking, I'll just want to take my pins out. But when you're tacking your quilt down for quilting, make sure that you come down as far as you can. Now with this framing machine, I haven't pulled it out as far as I can. It's set for a domestic machine, but I'm going to bring my bottom thread up. Gonna see how close to the edge. That's what I like about the open toe foot. You can really see what you're quilting. I'm gonna start right here, and I'm gonna get as close to the edge as I can, and I'm just gonna start moving up the quilt to tack it down. And I'm gonna come to the corner. Okay, so notice I'm getting little waves. So what's nice is you can pull it across to get these little wrinkles out, or you can use your thumb and your hand as you're going across. So I will also pull as I'm coming across, just like this. And I'll hold it down. Now, the closer the stitch, the more little wrinkles you get. So if we want to just make it more like a base stitch, man, we're gonna slow it way down. We're gonna get larger stitches. And I'm gonna take my pin out. But we're gonna have to go and move it really, really slow. But that's what you'll do. It's really slow. We'll raise it up just a little bit. There, that seems to be pretty good. And I'll just keep pulling along and tacking down. Anyway, now with the ruler base and the open toe foot, I'm ready to do my X's and decide how I want to quilt this. But I really hope that I've given you some really good information and helped you out with all those anxious feelings that we feel, and you'll try them out and start quilting on your own. Don't send your quilts out to be quilted. Use you to quilt it, because I know you have it in you. So thanks for joining me, and join me next time for another Tuesdays with Grace, where we can work together on improving our techniques. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.